Happy holidays, everyone. Back with another 12 Days of Giving with, you know her. Not only has she had two this year, she's been in every single year of our 12 Days of Giving. And today, just off camera, we were talking about this. And it's like, we rarely talk about like the normal, the traditional, just the everyday type situations that we're dealing with. And so today, Ashley's going to give us just the normal. Are we all normal?
No. Yes. No. No, but
So,
yes.
without further ado, Ashley, what is this normal we speak of?
I don't know. It's a setting on the dryer story, I guess. Like, right? I don't really know. But yes, as we were talking before, and I was sharing, like, I feel like when I come on, I share hard stuff, like deep, like trauma filled, sad, like I just feel like I always come with like some sad stuff. I can't say bad words on here, like some sad stuff. And so today, like, my thought is I would share about the couples, but a specific couple that might just be like kind of your typical, like run of the mill, quote unquote, normal couple, right? Because I think that there are far more of these than there are, the others where there is, extreme like tragedy, trauma, awful stuff. So yeah, that was kind of my thought today, if you're good with it.
No, it sounds great. And I think it'll allow people to understand too that a lot of us think we're not normal, right? And so I think going through this, we actually might realize that we are normal, a little more normal, right? There's no normal, but you know what I mean? Like we don't all have this tragedy stuff. Like there are just some of us that are run of the mill, normal life. And I think that's a great point to be speaking about.
Yeah. All right. You want me to jump into it?
Jump right in.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So this couple, let's call them Mark and Mary, double M's. That's easy for me to remember. So Mark and Mary are in their late 30s. Late 30s, they've got three kids, all in the elementary age. So like 5 to like 11 kind of age bracket, both dual professionals, although Mary has stepped back and worked part-time. She is in the medical space as a physical therapist, but stepped back and is working just super part-time to play the mom role, do her other part-time job, which is not really a part-time job, playing mom. Uh, and husband, Mark, in this case, he is he's an engineer. And they both collectively make pretty decent income. I wouldn't say that they would be what we classify as high income earners, but they make a good living. Their needs are certainly cared for, and their wants, and they're able to save a little bit, right? So they're not killing it, but they're doing pretty good. And all in all, Mark and Mary have a great relationship. Things are relatively smooth, right? As smooth as they can be with three kids in that age bracket. But all in all, like things are pretty smooth, except for when they talk about money. And that is the area where they have a hard time finding common ground on. They have a hard time relating, just understanding, and they have a hard time keeping their emotions in check when they go to talk about it. So, I share Mark and Mary's story here because I see this a lot. I see Mark and Mary in so many different couples where things are mostly good, right, in other aspects of their marriage. But when they go to talk about money, like something just takes over and just happens. So Mark and Mary reached out to work with me because while all the other areas of their relationship are great, like this one wasn't. And it was starting to really take a toll on things to where they were just avoiding conversations and almost operating in silos when it came to making financial decisions. And they had the awareness to recognize like, this isn't healthy. Like we can't and don't want to do this. So they reached out to me to work with me, and to, try and figure out how can we do this better. So off we went on an adventure into each of their own just individual money stories, into each of their relationships with money on an individual level. What we found is that Mark is very vigilant and anxious about money. He's your classic, like, I want to save everything. I don't want to spend anything. You could say frugal, and that would probably be nice. And so, like, Mark had a lot of anxiety over the fact that they weren't maxing out 401ks, they weren't maxing out Roths, they weren't maxing out and contributing as much as they could to the kids' 529 plans, and their savings wasn't at a place that he wanted, numbers wise. They were doing a little bit, but it wasn't where he thought they could be. And it made him really, really anxious. The type of work that he was involved in, it's pretty cutthroat. And so he kind of felt anxious, and like this loom constantly just hanging over him of like, hey, like, I could be let go. Like, it's not uncommon. And then we're in this situation where, I've got to find a job, and how long will that take? And, that kind of cycle. Mary, in doing her individual history, we found that, shocker, she has a little bit of the opposite approach to Mark. She is more comfortable spending money. It doesn't give her anxiety. I wouldn't say that she's a YOLO kind of girl, but like, she recognizes, hey, we have 3 kids. Like, we should enjoy this time with them. Like, we should go and do family outings and do, not extravagant vacations, but like, we should go and make memories and have experiences with them. And that costs money. And oh yeah, so do Halloween costumes. And so does Christmas. And so, do, all the other things, right, that come up when it comes to raising and having kids. And so, she would just spend the money. And, she felt like, and Mark agreed, like, it wasn't over the top. It wasn't extravagant. For the most part, it was like within the needs kind of bucket, but it was probably still more. And there wasn't alignment. More than anything, there just wasn't alignment. Mary just spent and didn't really, I don't want to say consult like she had to, but she didn't have that conversation with Mark around, hey, Christmas is coming up. How much do we want to spend on the kids? How much do we want to spend on each kid? How much do we want to spend on family? She just went and did it. And so a lot of couples operate that way, right? But, for Mark, it kind of felt like a betrayal. And not just with Christmas, but with a lot of things. But they couldn't talk about it, Story. Like, they just couldn't sit down and talk about it, because every time they did, one and or both got really defensive. Some name calling may have been made a few times. And they just could never get on the same page. In their words, they felt like they could never get on the same page. And so that's kind of the backdrop to their story. Let me pause. Where do you want me to go? Where do you want me to go with the rest of the story? Where should we go from here?
When you had those conversations with them individually, which absolutely had to do, there was no way around it for you in that one. Where did it lead to? Was there a point that when you were going on the journey with them individually, that they could somewhat pinpoint why they operate that way with money, and potentially why they couldn't have the conversation with the other one because of that?
Yeah. So we were able to, so with Mark's back history, it was pretty clear. It was almost like a duh. Kind of moment. It was pretty clear. He grew up in with a single mom where money had to be paid attention to, and there was risk there for not, right? Like utilities not being on, having to go without food. And so while that never actually happened, there was a lot of just like counting pennies, like just really like paying attention to things. In contrast though, like when he would visit with his dad, it wasn't that way. And he said he felt a little angry and kind of resentful towards his dad. Like later on, he realized why he was kind of angry with his dad is because dad had gone on to remarry. Mom did too, but it was a while, and so this like feeling of like, I have to like, my mom has to count pennies. Like I hear her talking about and like adding things up at the grocery store when we go to make sure that we have, like that. I don't want to do that. I don't like that. And so for Mark, like it was pretty clear, it was pretty easy. Like, why do you save? Why do you, put money aside like for the future. Why do you pay attention to money? Is because, there's consequences if you don't. So that was pretty easy, and Mark recognized that. But here's the thing. He also felt like it was a good thing. It's like, but this is a good thing. Like, this is how you quote unquote should be, right? With money. And so like, I'll leave Mark kind of there. With Mary, the path was it took a little bit to get there. She grew up in, a pretty, middle class, family. Both mom and dad were together. Mom stayed home. Dad worked, had a good job. She had a sister. And so like, things were fine. She didn't remember any like arguing about money. Occasionally sometimes dad would get frustrated that mom spent a little bit too much at Christmas. But like, other than that, like she had a much harder time getting to what was at the root of things for her. Even though it was a little difficult to get to the root of things for her, what we were able to do though is really help her understand more about Mark's position and hear Mark talk about it from a different angle, from a different place, from a different perspective, and just the impact on, how they go about making or not making financial decisions like jointly, how that brings up a lot of that anxiety and uncertainty for him. It's like he was constantly still living in that place, even though, he's like 30 years older, like emotionally, like his brain is still living kind of in that scarcity place.
And we find that, and I know we've talked about it before, but I know we say this a lot, is when that first money memory is what I call it, whatever that event is, financially, our brains are there. Like that's emotionally where we're at. And it still happens to everyone, all the conversations we had. It also kind of molds you in your life, right? Someone who was very detail oriented and a stickler like that does not surprise me. He's an engineer. Like it does not at all, and those go hand in hand. So we've gotten that. We figure out where they're at. How did you get them to come together and kind of move forward with that? Because it's not easy. Those are normal and common, but they're also they're opposite spectrums, right? My wife and I are very similar to that. She came from middle class. I came from a single mother. And it took us a long, long time to even do that. And we still have tiffs every now and again. Now, granted, she works for me now and can see it every day, so it's a little different. But like, it's still that way. So what brought them together, and kind of where are they at now with that conversation?
Well, I broke out my magic wand. Sprinkled some fairy dust in the computer there, and poof, they got better. So we started with kind of what I was sharing actually with Mary, really understanding more around what was going on for Mark. I'd like to say that we really got to kind of the root of Mary's, feelings, but we didn't. And that's the reality. I'd like to come on and say, like with all clients, we always, figure these things out, but I would be lying. Like when I said this is a very typical, like normal, like sometimes this happens. So, but we were able to help Mary understand Mark in a different way. And it was helpful, even though she still disagreed with the level or intensity of, how much he wanted, to say, but she was able to understand. And that helped to shape some of her emotional reaction, which then in turn decreased Mark's defensiveness, over time. Now, some of the work that we really did, apart from just that kind of sharing, is helping them set up consistent communication times, meetings to get together. So you can call them a money date, you can call it a money meeting, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but to help them establish, a regular check-in and the rules for that. So what are we going to talk about? What is it going to look like? How long is it going to be? Right? Because we're going to put a time cap on it. And hey, guess what? We're also not going to do it at 9:00 at night after the kids go down when we're both really, really tired. So we're going to set ourselves up for success, because that was also some of the problem. They were trying to have these conversations at night. And I get it. Like, Clayton and I are super busy, like with kids, travel, sports. I know you are on the same boat. Like, and so for us, important conversations, we can't do at night. Because I'm not a nice person when I'm cranky. and tired. Mostly it's me. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. And so, helping them really understand, like, how can we set you two up best for being able to have a healthy conversation around this? What are the rules? What are the protocols? What are we going to do if we get to like a stalemate here and we're not in agreement? How are we going to handle that? And are we going to come back to it? So a plan for coming back to it, even when we don't agree, because a lot of couples, they disagree, they fight, and then they never come back to it. And so there's never any like resolution there. They just keep moving on. And that's not healthy. That's not healthy either. So helping them kind of set them up and then practicing. Like, I would help them practice. They would do their meeting. So they would come to session. They would bring their agenda items, what they wanted to talk about. And like, they would do their meeting with me so that I could, not watch from like a creepy, like weird kind of place. But like, if they started to derail or get really emotional, like, I could intervene at the start, right? And help point out, hey, this is when we would do this. This is when you would want to pause and, really give them some confidence while still having someone there to help facilitate so that it's safe, right? And then eventually, like, they spread their wings and they flew off. And, has every conversation been perfect? No, but they are having the conversations, and more often than not, they're going okay. And they're going pretty well. And they're able to, they've even been able to agree on, like, hey, this is the amount that we want to have in savings. And right now, like, our focus is going to be on getting, that savings to this amount. And I say that because Mark was able to share, like, that's actually what is causing him so much anxiety from like the job standpoint, is that if fluff hits the fan, like, our savings is not there. And I really need that to be at this number so that I can kind of catch my breath. So they were able to have that conversation, identify that number, and then create a plan. But it took a while. It took about 18 months, truth be told. We just wrapped things up about 4 months ago. And so they have not reached out since. And so, knocking on wood, that so far 4 months of money date conversations are continuing to go well.
Did they have a financial planner before you guys met?
Oh, I love that you asked me that. No, they did not. So part of, once we got to a place where they were having some money conversations and able to kind of have that, I did recommend that they consider working with an advisor. They had, and this might be where I know it's not the typical tradition or normal case, but they did anticipate on Mark's side, him being left, he was an only child, so him being left a pretty decent chunk of wealth that was like his dad had already said, like, this is earmarked for, so they did anticipate that. Now that could be decades and decades, like, down the road, who knows? But they, knowing that, like, I did say, hey, you may want to consider working with an advisor. They can help you with some of these money conversations and explain things at a numbers level. And it doesn't have to be, where they're managing your assets, because they had that myth that financial advisors, it was only like investments. And I get it. But, we were able to kind of talk about who might be a good fit, for them, what type of advisor. And I know that they made some contacts and they reached out, and my hope is that they landed with somebody.
That's awesome. And that's a really big point of it, of one, the misnomer that it's financial advisors only deal with it when you have money. That's a whole crazy concept to me. But I get it. I understand. That's how media is driven, society is driven, just how the makeup of what we do is. When you lead with that, right, you're kind of mentioning, hey, this might be a great idea. Besides apprehension that they think it's only about money, do you ever see a client of yours go, well, why would a planner or an advisor help me with these emotional money conversations? Do they ever have pushback there or not? This is, by the way, listeners, this is for me personally wanting to know, because sometimes I hear it, sometimes I don't. My clients don't, but I just didn't know if you run into that.
I don't know if I've ever heard a client frame it that way, Story, where like the emotional, because I don't know if for the most part, clients still see that as emotional. Like, I think they probably, I could be wrong. I think my perception, I guess, is that clients still mostly see it as numbers driven. And so Yeah, I have not had that brought up. I think that if couples aren't agreeing on money or they need help, I think that for the most part, it's, hey, this is a numbers issue, not an emotional, not an emotional, like relational one. So yeah, that'd be interesting. I can't recall any though off the top of my head.
I was just wondering. That kind of just came to me too with that question, but
Yeah.
it goes to the point of what we're educating about. Your content, my content, everything that we do is the emotions are there, people. It's not about the dollars. It's not about the numbers. It truly isn't. Because at the end of the day, 1+1=2. We can figure it out. The equation that we don't know is your emotions, your behavior, your past traumas, your current traumas. Who knows? And I really hope that people listening today can, one, understand and realize that, hey, you're normal. I'm normally having those conversations too, but just maybe it's not about the actual dollar and the money. There's something else, and there is. I can promise you that there is something else there, causing this or causing the apprehension or whatever. But I really, that's what I want them to take away from today. Is there anything else that you want them to be like? You know what? I am normal, damn it, but I do need help.
Yeah. So I always love this question because I think I answer it pretty similarly every time, that you don't have to wait for problems for there to be problems to reach out for help or support. So, in fact, those are those are the clients that tend to do far better, are the ones that proactively reach out to say, hey, like this area of money, like we don't really talk about it so well. And like, it's not a huge, we get by, like we're fine, but like, we're also just not satisfied with things just being fine. And we want to make sure that we put things in place to where it doesn't get worse over time. It's like compound interest, right? Uh, you know, emotion, yeah, those problems, they compound over time, and not in the way that you want it to, like it does in your investments. It's not what we want. So reach out sooner than later for help or for support.
Absolutely. So while you're listening to this during the holiday season, go ahead, reach out. Ashley's here for you. I'm here for you. Our collective's here for you. You can get all that information somewhere that the marketing team will put. It's cool. Reach out to us so that way we can help. So I appreciate you, Ashley. Have a happy holidays. Listeners, happy holidays. We'll be talking soon.